right, I want to bring in now Lulu Garcia-Navarro and Jim Bianco. Jim, you know, when we look at the market response to this, you know, they want to hear more people like the congressman who are going to say, no, we're just going to draw the line. We'll see. You know, he wants to get to yes. He's not right now. But the market's speaking loud and clearly. There was something else you were watching today, which was America went out actually and tried to sell a whole bunch of debt today, you know, like they do. They go out. And what happened?
It didn't go very well. I mean, it wasn't a disaster, but they had a hard time finding enough buyers at the price that they wanted. So they had to raise the interest rate in order to move those bonds. And the market looked at that as a signal that if we're going to add to the deficit over the next several years and potentially get more inflation, we're going to need higher interest rates if we're going to try and sell $2.5 trillion worth of bonds every year.
And that, of course, is where it gets scary because those higher interest rates affect everybody. So, Lulu, when you hear the congressman come out, and I mean, I know he wants to get to yes, but I mean, you're hearing one of the few people who's out there willing to publicly come out and say, and he likes Trump, he supports a lot of things in the bill, okay? He's not an ever-Trumper, not at all. But he's drawing the line on this. At the end of the day, does everybody get in line?
I don't want to prognosticate, but I'll say 3 is the number here. They can't lose 3 votes. That's such a narrow margin. And if you heard him talking there, he's not upset at Trump. He's upset at the moderates because because this is the real problem here, that you have one group that we just heard from saying, you know, the deficit is the problem, and I don't want to be giving tax breaks to blue states and you know, liberals who are upset about, you know, their SALT deductions. And you have those people who actually won the House, right, in competitive districts saying, I have to come home and bring something for these people if you want to win in 2 years. So this is always the problem with any Democrats and Republicans. They always have a very, you know, wide, fractious group of people that they have to placate. But ultimately, this is a test of Donald Trump. This is the first really big thing that he's put a lot of muscle behind. This is the big, beautiful bill that he's been talking about. And, you know, if he can't push this through, it's going to say something about where his administration's headed.
Right. And of course, it won't go through the Senate. I mean, there's all kinds of, I mean, this is all in a sense very Potemkin village. I mean, the whole thing. All right, Jim, I wanted to put up the whiteboard because you've been watching an up to the moment gauge of the other flip side of this, right? Which is the whole context of tariffs, right? And what the tariffs that Trump is doing are the impact they're having. So on inflation in the first, okay, I like this to be actually set up where I can see staples. Okay, so the first 3 weeks of May, you're watching this thing called trueflation, which is true inflation, right? So 0.64%. That's the increase that you posted on Twitter that you were watching there in prices, 0.64%. And I understand that that may not sound like a lot, but Jim, if it continued over a year, you note that this would be annualized, okay? Annualized, this would be inflation of 18 to 20%, okay? Now, that is stunning. And I understand, even if tariffs don't go lower, these price increases we saw were sudden. They might level off, right? You're not expecting a world where we're getting 18 to 20%. But just annualizing it puts this 6.64% in context, right? This is what's happening now. It is a seismic shift in the American economy.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Trueflation, by the way, measures millions of prices on the internet, and they watch them daily. And what we're seeing is around May 1st, about 3 or 4 weeks after Liberation Day, when all of the container ships with all the tariffs started to come into the ports like Los Angeles, prices started to move up, and they're starting to continue to move up. Now, you're right. There's one level of tariffs. They should step higher and then level off, but they're moving up, and that is starting to show up in prices, and eventually it's going to start to show up in the inflation statistics, and that's going to be a big driver of interest rates, and that's also going to be another reason to push rates higher.
Right, which forces this into, you've got all this borrowing as you have this and all that interest rate going higher. We're already paying more on interest in this country, Lulu, than we pay on the Department of Defense, than we pay on Medicare. I mean, it's bad. And eventually it's going to get to a point where it's too late. And that is what upsets me about it, because you got to have some people who have courage to do something about it. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was just speaking about the tariffs, and he said something that really surprised me. It's just a couple of moments ago. This sound just came in. Let's just play it.
The Chinese tariffs were brutal, and they changed a lot of things, but they are over. They are over, and you will see all those prices go away. I would expect that prices in America will be unaffected.
I mean, I guess fact checks, prices in America are affected. They are not, and the tariffs are not over.
No, and we're a long way away from we're going to bring prices down, by the way, which was the promise of President Trump when he came into office. No, of course not. I mean, they was like 130%. They brought it down to 30% on China. That is not zero, and we're seeing it being affected. And this is something that we're hearing from the administration. J.D. Vance, the vice president, also said this today to one of my colleagues at the Times, which is basically like, this is transitory. This isn't going to stick.
Right.
Remember, President Biden and his administration tried to sell that to the American people. It did not go so well. Why? Because people look at prices. They know what they're paying out of their pocket. So they can say whatever they want, but the truth is there.
The truth is there, and people can experience what they see on the internet, as Jim was pointing out, with whether it's twouflation or what they're experiencing every day when they go on Amazon or anywhere else. Thank you both so very much.